There's a very specific kind of peace that comes with running a farm. You wake up at sunrise, sip coffee while watching the mist roll off the fields, and your biggest concern is whether the goats have decided to chew through the fence again. I had everything I needed: land, quiet, and not a single person telling me what color my mailbox should be. Then came the HOA. To clarify, I don't live in the HOA. My land butts up against the fancy little community next door, Whispering Pines. Nothing whispery about it except the way the residents gossip. I'm not part of their covenant, don't pay their dues, and frankly, wouldn't be caught dead discussing shrub height regulations at a weekend brunch. But that didn't stop her. Her name was Karen. Of course it was. The kind of woman who walks like she owns the ground and talks like she owns the air above it. She moved into Whispering Pines, and within 3 weeks somehow wrangled herself into being the president of their HOA. 3 weeks. I've seen less ambitious coups in banana republics. And let me tell you, once Karen got her claws on that little HOA, things shifted fast. Rules multiplied like rabbits on Viagra. Fines rained down like confetti at a New Year's party. One guy got fined for having his Halloween lights up on November 1st. Another was threatened for planting an unapproved species of bush. I'm not joking. She had a list of acceptable plants. It read like something between a botanical index and a fascist manifesto. I watched all this unfold from my porch swing, sipping lemonade and shaking my head. Not my circus, not my clowns. If they wanted to let Queen Clipboard run the show, that was their problem. But then her gaze drifted toward my land. I first noticed it when I was feeding the chickens. Karen was driving by in her spotless white Lexus, license plate, KRN1, I kid you not, and she slowed down, narrowing her eyes like a hawk that spotted something unsanitary. Her look lingered a little too long on my barn, then shifted to the old tractor I still hadn't painted. She drove off, but I knew. I just knew. Next time I saw her, she waved at me like we were neighbors in a 1950s sitcom. Hi there. I just love your little setup, she chirped, practically choking on the word little. Thanks, I said, keeping my tone pleasant but neutral, like you do with a wasp hovering too close to your ear. Oh, I was just wondering, she added, taking a half step closer to my fence. What exactly do you keep in that barn? Anything regulated. I blinked. Regulated by who? Well, you know, certain items aren't really safe to store on residential adjacent properties. That barn's been there since my granddad built it. Long before Whispering Pines even had a paved road. She smiled, tight, controlled. Still, we have to think about community safety. Your community, not mine. Her eye twitched. Well, actually, we've had a few concerns raised about your property. I leaned on the fence post. From who? She waved her hand vaguely. From members of the community. Uh-huh. I know every one of my neighbors on this stretch. The only complaints they'd ever make about me were probably that I gave out too much zucchini in summer. She circled my place like a buzzard for the next few weeks, asking questions, taking pictures, even once bringing a clipboard, of course, and pretending to jot things down while standing just outside the property line. I ignored her mostly. I figured she'd get bored when she couldn't sink her fangs in anything official. Then one morning, while checking fence posts on the north side of my property, I noticed footprints. They weren't mine, and they weren't the postman's. A size 7 sneaker, judging by the tread. Karen-sized. The footprints led halfway up my driveway, then veered off into the grass, toward the barn. That was the moment I stopped sipping lemonade and started locking things up. After spotting those footprints, I didn't go full tinfoil hat, but let's just say I swapped my laid-back farmer hat for something with a little more edge. Call it my Karen response mode. Now, I could have just waited to catch her in the act, but frankly, I had chores to do, animals to feed, and better things to waste my time on than ambush stakeouts. So I decided to try the adult thing first. Talk. The next time I saw her, again, conveniently just driving by, with her window already rolled down, I waved her down. Hey, Karen, I called out, leaning casually on my fence. You wouldn't happen to know who's been wandering around my property late at night, would you? Her lips puckered like she'd bitten into a lemon. Oh, no. Why would you ask me that? I gave her a long look. Just figured you're the only one around here with an interest in what's in my barn. Her smile was stretched so tight, I'm surprised it didn't snap. Well, I assure you, I would never trespass. That would be illegal. She chuckled like that word was just hilarious. I'd agree, I said. And whoever's been snooping around, they should probably stop before they run into something worse than a locked door. I watched her face carefully. A flicker, just for a moment. She got the message. Or so I thought. Spoiler, I gave her way too much credit. Over the next few days, the circling didn't stop. She'd drive past slow enough for snails to pass her. Once, I caught her trying to peer through a knothole in my fence. At that point, I knew the only thing that would stop her was solid, indisputable proof, and maybe a mild taste of humiliation. Time to go from polite farmer to low-key surveillance specialist. I installed cameras, motion sensor lights, even rigged a few silent alarms. And to really seal the deal, I went to visit my old buddy, Sheriff Tucker. Now, Tucker and I go way back. We used to skip stones down at Miller's Creek and argue about the best bait for bass. So when I showed up at the sheriff's office with a coffee and a smirk, he welcomed me like I'd brought barbecue. Damn, haven't seen you since you fixed that old tractor of yours, Tucker said, clapping me on the back. What brings you down from Mount Peaceful? I've got myself a situation. He leaned forward, immediately serious. Something up on the farm? I laid it out. The HOA. The Karen. The uninvited nightly visits. He scratched his beard and sighed. Look, I believe you. But without evidence. I held up a small tablet. That's why I'm here. His eyes lit up when I showed him the camera setup. Multiple angles. Timestamped motion logs. A full system I'd been quietly testing, with video capture linked straight to a secure cloud and a little bonus feature. If a specific gate or door got opened without deactivation, it will ping the sheriff's office directly. You serious? Tucker asked, eyebrows rising. As a bull in rutting season, I said. And I want to add an auto alert system to the barn. You know, just in case our HOA queen gets curious. Tucker stood up and actually gave a small applause. Hell, son, that's the most entertaining civic solution I've heard all month. We shook hands. He gave it the green light. And with that, Operation Don't Touch My Barn was officially live. The final step was installing fresh, shiny padlocks. Real beefy ones. The kind that scream, not your playground, even to the most entitled of busybodies. And then, I waited. Didn't take long. About 36 hours later, after a long day of mucking stalls and replacing fence wire, I was sitting in my bedroom before going to bed with a hot cup of tea. The sun had set behind the trees. A rare moment of peace. I actually thought, maybe she gave up. Maybe, just maybe, Karen had come to her senses and realized trying to rule farmland with HOA bylaws was a bad idea. Then I remembered who I was dealing with. I snorted, shook my head, and said aloud, nah, this is Karen. If there's a gate, she's going to test it. If there's a line, she's going to cross it. And wouldn't you know it, less than 10 minutes later, my tablet pinged. Motion detected, front gate. I tapped the screen. The camera lit up. There she was, Queen Entitlement herself, striding right up to my gate in designer yoga pants, and enough hairspray to damage the ozone layer. She jiggled the gate. Locked. She stepped back, stared at it like it personally offended her, then turned around and walked off screen. I started to hope. Maybe she'll give up. 2 minutes later, nope. She's back. With bolt cutters. I stared at the screen, half in shock, half in admiration. Well, damn, I muttered. Credit where it's due. You're prepared. She positioned the bolt cutters. Squeezed. The padlock snapped. Alert. Unauthorized entry. Sheriff notified. I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of my tea. No point rushing in. Karen was about to build her own downfall one illegal snip at a time, and this time, there were witnesses. Digital ones. Watching Karen cut that lock on the camera felt surreal. Like I was witnessing a nature documentary, one of those slow-mo predator scenes, except the predator was a self-important woman with a bad sense of boundaries and a thirst for HOA-approved domination. She strutted in through my gate like she owned the place. And to be fair, she did walk like someone who thought fences were optional and laws were suggestions. I half expected her to pull out a measuring tape and start docking imaginary HOA points. She paused in front of the barn, hands on her hips, examining it like a general surveying enemy fortifications. I sipped my tea. Then she reached into her canvas tote bag, embroidered with HOA President in gold thread, because of course it was, and pulled out her bolt cutters again. Seriously, the woman packed them like some folks carry lip balm. Clink. Off went the second lock. I checked the timestamp, 10:43 p.m. The sheriff's system had already received the intrusion alert. Tucker and his guys would be on their way. No sirens, per our agreement, just lights, rolling and silent and steady like the world's most satisfying karma truck. Meanwhile, Karen had entered the barn. Now, my barn's nothing fancy, just your usual setup, tools, feed, some power equipment, a kayak I never use, and the occasional mystery item that only makes sense if you've lived on a farm for 15 years. But to Karen, it must have looked like the Ark of the Covenant. She started poking around like she was on a scavenger hunt, moving tarps, opening drawers, examining a bag of lime like it was a controlled substance. The cameras picked up her muttering, something about hazards and violations. Lady, this is a barn. You want to inspect something? Start with your own logic. Anyway, I stayed put on the porch. No need to interrupt a criminal mid-performance. I wanted the scene fully set when the cavalry arrived, just for style. At about 10:50, I saw the flash of lights at the end of the road. A moment later, a county cruiser rolled quietly up my gravel drive. No sirens, just two beams sweeping over the trees like searchlights for justice. I stood up and gave them a little wave. Sheriff Tucker got out first. His deputy followed, both of them keeping their steps light. She still in there? Tucker asked, his voice low. Oh, she's having a great time, I replied. I think she's in the unauthorized inventory audit stage. He grinned. Well, let's make it her final report. We walked toward the barn like we were stepping onto a movie set. Honestly, all we needed was popcorn and theme music. Inside, Karen was elbow deep in one of my feed bins, muttering something about improper storage codes. She was so absorbed in her little power trip that she didn't hear us open the door. Didn't even flinch when we stepped inside. Tucker cleared his throat. Nothing. The deputy coughed. Still nothing. Then Tucker raised his voice, polite but firm. Ma'am. Karen jerked upright like she'd been electrocuted, spinning around so fast she nearly lost her balance. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. Oh, she gasped, clutching her clipboard to her chest like it was a shield. What are you doing here? Tucker folded his arms. Better question, ma'am. What are you doing here? She blustered. I was performing a necessary inspection. There have been serious concerns about this property. By who? I asked from behind him. The Garden Gnome Coalition? Karen regained a sliver of that misplaced confidence, standing up straighter. As president of Whispering Pines HOA, it is my duty to ensure the safety of the entire area. Even if that means trespassing, breaking locks. Tucker asked. That lock was obstructing a potential hazard, she said, like that sentence made sense to anyone with brain cells. Tucker just nodded slowly. Ma'am, I'm going to stop you right there. Because we've got your entire little visit recorded. Cameras. Time-stamped. And our system got pinged the moment you cut that gate lock. That's felony trespass. Breaking and entering. Tampering with private property. Karen opened her mouth, probably to say something spectacularly stupid, but Tucker held up a hand. Nope. Don't. Just don't. She looked between us, eyes darting like a squirrel caught stealing birdseed. I have authority. I'm the president of the HOA. Tucker blinked. Ma'am, this ain't your HOA. This is private farmland. Not under your jurisdiction. And even if it were, you don't get to commit crimes to enforce imaginary rules. But I, deputy, Tucker said, turning without even finishing the sentence. The deputy stepped forward, already slipping the cuffs out. Karen gasped. Wait. This is all a misunderstanding. You can't do this. I'm trying to protect the community. I couldn't help myself. You're doing a bang-up job. The hay bales feel very safe now. She turned toward me, fire in her eyes. You'll regret this. Tucker chuckled. Pretty sure he won't. Then Karen did what Karen does when backed into a corner with nothing but ego and desperation. She shoved the deputy and made a break for it. I wish I could say I was surprised. I wasn't. She sprinted out of the barn like a feral cat, arms flailing, scream echoing in the night. She got maybe 20 feet. Then came the fall. I'll say this for Karen. She moved fast for someone wearing wedge sandals and delusions of grandeur. She bolted out of my barn like she was trying to qualify for the HOA Olympics, shrieking something about citizens' rights and illegal setups, as if any of us were going to stop and debate her constitutional interpretations. She made it about 20 feet. Then her perfectly manicured foot found a rut in the dark, the same one my old cow Betsy likes to nap in during hot days. Her ankle twisted, her clipboard went flying, and gravity did what law enforcement hadn't yet. Thump. The sound was glorious, like a symphony of justice played in one satisfying schmuck of a face hitting the dirt. And not just dirt. You see, Betsy had been there earlier that evening. And Betsy is not what you'd call dainty. So Karen didn't just fall. No, Karen landed, face first, into a fresh pile of what can only be described as grade A organic reality check. We all froze for a second. Then came the scream. Ugh. What is this? What is this filth? Aha. From the doorway of the barn, Tucker muttered, deadpan. That'd be Betsy's opinion on trespassers. I couldn't help myself. I leaned a little to the left, just enough to be seen over Tucker's shoulder, and added, Welcome to the real rural America, Karen. She scrambled to get up, slipping once, twice, before finally stumbling upright. Her hair looked like it had been styled by a tornado and dipped in regret. Her once white blouse now carried an aggressive new pattern, cow manure brown with streaks of shame. As she stood there blinking into the flashing lights of the patrol car pulling in behind us, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, She finally found what she's been searching for in my farm. The deputy stepped forward again, cuffs ready, this time without hesitation. Karen didn't resist. She couldn't. Her dignity had already made a run for it, and the rest of her followed soon after. Ma'am, the deputy said with as much professional restraint as he could muster. You are under arrest for felony trespassing, destruction of private property, and resisting detainment. Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out but a weak, moist gag. Probably manure-related. They cuffed her. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. Not even her clipboard, which now lay abandoned in the mud like a fallen scepter. Tucker turned to me. Well, he said, I think we can officially close the book on that nonsense. I'll send her a bill for the locks, I replied. And maybe some shampoo. He laughed, slapped me on the back. Hell of an operation. Might have been the most satisfying bust I've done all year. Oh, I said, smirking, we're not done yet. Because see, while Karen was busy face-planting into farm justice, my cameras had been dutifully recording the entire performance. Multiple angles, crisp night vision, full sound. And I may have, purely by accident of course, uploaded a short highlight reel to a private link. A link which somehow, mysteriously, ended up in the inboxes of a few very active neighborhood group chats. By morning, it was everywhere. Viral. Explosive. Titled, Karen versus the Country, an educational documentary. Clips of her trying to yank open my gate like it owed her money. Snipping locks in night vision green like a budget action hero. Her triumphant strut into the barn. And, of course, her dramatic dive into Betsy's fresh deposit, with that perfect comedic pause before the scream. The internet did its thing. Comments rolled in by the thousands. She wanted access. She got access. I think the cow deserves a medal. That scream belongs in a museum. Karen, 0 manure, 1000. I wasn't surprised when the HOA held an emergency meeting the next day. What did surprise me was the turnout. Apparently, Karen's little regime had been about as popular as a wasp at a picnic. People were ready to revolt. They just needed the right moment. And they got it. With a soundtrack. Karen, still covered in legal trouble and PR disaster, was removed from her self-declared throne. No one even defended her. One guy even brought balloons. She tried to spin it, said it was a setup, a smear campaign, that she was a victim of a targeted rural militia. Didn't fly, especially since her HOA legal fund was now being redirected to cover her own compensation payments to me for damages and trespass. Turns out lawyers are a lot less enthusiastic about defending you when your primary evidence includes footage of you face down in livestock excrement. She pled out in court, avoiding jail time in exchange for a public apology, a fat settlement check, and a legal agreement to stay 100 feet away from my land for the rest of her natural life. She moved 2 states over within a week. Rumor is she tried to run for neighborhood council there. Lasted 5 days. After Karen's grand manure dive went viral, her life unraveled faster than one of my hay bales during a windstorm. Whispering Pines HOA held what they called a special emergency session, but really, it was more of a neighborhood block party with extra paperwork. People brought cookies, lawn chairs, and lawn signs that said, "By Karen." I was invited, of course, honorary guest of what became, essentially, her dethroning. Gary from Lot 8 gave a speech comparing her rule to the Dark Ages. I don't think he meant it literally, but the HOA newsletter later titled the recap, "The End of Tyranny." A bit dramatic, but I wasn't complaining. Then came the gift. At the end of the meeting, a sweet older couple, Donna and Greg, HOA lifers who'd been horrified by Karen's crusade, walked over and handed me a gift bag. Inside, Karen's clipboard, the one she used to wave around like it had magical authority, still smelled faintly of lavender hand sanitizer and delusion. They had retrieved it from the HOA office before her departure and agreed it belonged in the hands of the man who finally outmaneuvered her royal regulation ship. "I thought you might want a souvenir," Donna said, smiling. "Oh," I said, already picturing exactly where it would go. "I know just the place." That evening, I walked back out to the barn, my land, my rules, and hung that clipboard right on the outside of the barn door. Same one Karen broke into. Same door she thought held some kind of forbidden secrets. And right below it, a small wood-burn sign I made just for the occasion. In memory of the Queen's final inspection. May she rest in manure. Every time I open that barn door now, I get a chuckle. Sheriff Tucker still brings it up whenever we meet at the bait shop. "You know," he said the last time we talked, "I don't think I've ever seen someone weaponize rural peace and quiet so effectively." I grinned. It's all about knowing your terrain. Karen paid her fine. A hefty one, which covered the new locks, my time, and a custom pressure washer rental. She also submitted a handwritten apology, court-ordered, of course, where she somehow managed to use the word misunderstood 12 times. But the best part? She left, packed up her entitlement, her bolt cutters, and whatever ego she had left, and moved out of state. Whispering Pines threw an actual celebration. Balloons. Cake. Someone even baked cookies shaped like barns with padlocks on them. They gave me a plate. Apparently, her new neighborhood didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat once they got wind of her past. Internet's funny like that. What goes into Betsy doesn't always stay on the farm. So what now? Life returned to normal. My chickens went back to complaining about the sunrise. Betsy, unknowingly immortalized in viral justice history, continues her slow war against clean fences. And me? Well, I still run my farm. Still sip coffee on my porch in the mornings. And every once in a while, someone drives by real slow, just to catch a glimpse of the barn where it happened. Sometimes I wave. Sometimes I just smile. Because there's something deeply satisfying about standing your ground, playing the long game, and letting someone's own arrogance do the hard work for you. And in the end, Karen got exactly what she deserved. In front of witnesses. On camera. Face first. Into Betsy's greatest work. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.